Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel where today we are doing another recent reads. And I have 6 books to talk to you about. And so the first 2 that we're going to talk about are the books that I DNF'd. And the first one is Mortal Follies by Alexis Hall. So this is an adult historical fantasy romance, and it's sapphic. And in it we are following one of our leads who has been cursed, and she seeks out our other lead to help her break that curse, and the story goes from there. I don't have a ton more for the description, in part because I DNF'd this at page 24. And I DNF'd it so very quickly, in part because I wasn't vibing with the writing style. It just wasn't quite working for me. But also because I had certain expectations going into this book because it is a romance. When I read a romance, I really like to have, be in the head of one of our leads so that I can get all their thoughts and feelings and longing and pining and all of that great stuff that comes with it being a romance. But this is not told from the perspective of either of our leads. It is first-person perspective, but from a third party who's just observing this romance and interpreting body language and that kind of thing. And I was not expecting it, and I didn't really like it. And so I did flip to the back of the book to see kind of how the romance was going to play out. And while it is definitely fine, it wasn't so good that I really felt the need to try to struggle through this odd little narration situation. So I just went ahead and DNF'd it. And then the other book that I DNF'd in this period is Dragonfall by LR Lam. And this is adult, I'm pretty sure it's categorized as adult fantasy romance-ish, and I don't totally know what it's about other than kind of the very basic description, which is that there is a dragon who's been pulled into the human realm, and there's a thief, and they maybe have to work together for something. Not totally sure. That's the very, very basic gist. But I DNF'd this at 10 pages in. I also was not totally loving this writing style, but also it was really quickly apparent to me that this is more new adult. That's kind of what it felt like, just from how the characters were. And my thing is that if I get sucked into a book, I'm not necessarily thinking about what age range this is aimed at, right? If I'm thinking about it and going, oh, this is probably new adult, then it means that I probably am not loving the story so much. And so that's kind of what was happening. I don't necessarily have anything bad to say about this, because it just really wasn't for me. And so, I mean, at 10 pages, I did go look at Goodreads, by the way, and I did also find out, that's how I kind of found out that it's a romance, and also specifically an enemies to lovers romance, which isn't really my trope, and so I just decided to go ahead and DNF it. But again, I don't necessarily have anything bad to say about it. This one was just, oh, this is a book that's really, really not for me, and so I just went ahead and put it down. But the very first book that I did actually finish is A Mirror Mended by Alix Harrow. This is adult fantasy. It's a novella. It's the second book in this series that started with A Spindle Splintered, and in it we're following our main character of Zinnia, who has been traveling through the Sleeping Beauty realms when all of a sudden she is sucked into a Snow White realm, which has never happened before. She has no idea how it was possible at all, and now she has to figure out a way to get home, and the story goes from there. And this is a kind of weird story because I have such mixed feelings about it. And on the one hand, I love that this feels like a very natural continuation from the first book. The first book happened, and where it ended was a good place to end. And this is I think 5 years in the future, and it feels very realistic that this is where we would land, that this is what is happening, and these are the thoughts and feelings and things that Zinnia is having to deal with and process and all of that kind of stuff. I love that it feels like just this very natural continuation of her story. I also just think that it's fascinating to like kind of get a peek into these various realms, the Sleeping Beauty realms, the Snow White realms that we kind of start exploring a little bit of, just like how these realms appear and like how they're trying to figure out like, oh, which version of the story are we getting into? I kind of love that idea with these fairy tales. The thing that I really struggled with was the romance. There is a weird romance in this, and I didn't really buy it. At least not to the extent that we kind of needed it to be. Like, I would buy that there is chemistry. I would buy that there is like some lusting and even kissing and all of that stuff. But where the relationship ended up at the end and where we needed it to be by the end for like the rest of the plot to make sense, it didn't. That part of the romance didn't make sense to me, and I didn't really buy it. And so it's really unfortunate because, like, again, we need that romance to work for the main story to totally work, and because the romance didn't work, the like main story wasn't as strong as it could have been. And so I liked this book, but I did not love this book in the same way that I didn't actually I didn't love the first book, but I really, really liked it. And I didn't feel those same strong feelings for this second book. And it's kind of disappointing because I could have like I said, I think that this is a really nice natural continuation, and it could have been better than it ultimately was. That being said, if there was I did still enjoy this. Okay. I did enjoy it overall. If there's a third book in this series, I will absolutely pick it up and hope that it gets a little bit better. But I was a little bit disappointed because I did like the first one so much more than this one. But I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. And then I picked up Over the Woodward Wall by A. Deborah Baker. And this is middle grade fantasy. It feels like a fairy tale or a folk tale that's been written down. And we're following our main characters of Avery and Zib, and they one day find this wall in the middle of the street and they decide to climb over it. And it takes them into this alternate world. And even though they have never met before, they have to learn to trust each other so that they can continue, like, basically survive their journey to the impossible city where hopefully they can from there get home. I am not going to say too much about this because I went into this book with a very specific purpose. This book is kind of a companion, well, this series, because this is the first book of a series, is kind of a companion series to the Alchemical Journals series that by Seanan McGuire. It starts with Middle Game, and I don't remember the name of the second one, but these books are referenced in those books. And so I picked this up with the intent of, I want to understand the Alchemical Journals series better by understanding the references that are made to these books. And that was my primary purpose. And so I continued this and finished this for that purpose. But if it had been any other book, if it had not been, you know, this thing that's referenced in these other books that I really like, I would have DNF'd this. And so I think it's fine for what it's doing, but it's not really for me. And so I don't want to like critique it too harshly or say too much about it because, like, I would have DNF'd it. I genuinely would have DNF'd it if I didn't have this other specific purpose for reading it. I am going to continue on in this series. I probably will continue to be like not totally like talking about him too much because I assume that I'm not really going to love this series by the end. But I do think for what it was doing, it did it pretty well. And I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. And then I picked up In the Corsair's Bed by Ruby Dixon. And this is the second book in the Corsair's series, which is a companion series to the Ice Planet Barbarian series, which I have not read. I started with these ones, which I think is kind of a little bit backwards, but I'm okay with that. These are all novellas. They're romances, science fiction romance novellas. This is the second book in this series, if I didn't say that already. But we're following our two leads, one of them being a giant blue alien who is aboard a pirate ship with like 3 or 4 other big blue aliens that are also pirates. And one day he sees a human being sold as a slave, but she looks terrible, and the medic in him cannot let it slide, so he goes ahead and purchases her and fixes her up and tries to help her find a place aboard their ship. And I really like this. Like, the thing I like about this series is that everything about it is really solid. There's nothing about it that I think is super amazing or excellent, but it's just a really solid romance. It's got solid writing. It's got a decent plot. You feel like there may actually be chemistry there. The sex scenes are not anything special, but it doesn't make me cringe on the inside. The narrators are pretty good, and so overall it just ends up being this really easy, fun kind of read that really for me has been more of a palate cleanser than anything. And it's very quick because it's only like 136 pages or like 4 hours or something. So yeah, I ended up liking this it is absolutely an example of like a really solid romance. It's not special, like I said, but it is like, it's good. And so if you like science fiction romances, this may be worthwhile to pick up. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I have every intention of picking up the next one in the series. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is Skeleton Song by Seanan McGuire. Now, this is a short story that is in the Wayward Children series, which is an adult portal fantasy series about these kids who one day end up going through a door that is secretly a portal to another world, and they spend time there, and for some reason they have come back to our world. And so Miss Eleanor West of Miss Eleanor West's School for Wayward Children takes care of these children and helps them try to acclimate to being back in this world. Now that's what the series is about. This particular story is about Christopher, and Christopher is one of the kids that we meet at this school. Now, in this particular series, the even-numbered books in the series follow some of these kids, and we get to watch them go through their portal. They're more historical kind of stories instead of being part of the present day adventure or narration. And interestingly, this story is Christopher's backstory. This is him going through the portal and seeing a part of that particular journey. And it was really interesting. It's only 25 pages, but it really, really packs a punch. And even though I knew how it had to end, when we got to the ending, it felt like I was sucker punched. I was just like, oh, that ending, it hit like a ton of bricks. So yeah, it was pretty good. You don't totally have to have read the series to be able to read this short story, but I think that it is harder to follow some of the elements if you haven't. I just definitely wouldn't start here. I think that it reads a lot better if you have more of the background knowledge. So I liked this. It was good. If you're into the Wayward Children series, I would definitely recommend it. I think it's ebook only though. But you can find it for a couple bucks, and it is, I think, well worth the cost. I ended up giving this 4 stars. So that is it. If you have any thoughts or feelings about any of the things that I have read or DNF'd, please leave me a comment down below. But that's it. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to, and until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.